Hey guys, OG Albino here, bringing you guys a cool little sword and shield discussion video, competitive implications, that kind of thing. I don't know exactly what I'm going to call this, but essentially, if you didn't hear recently, Farfetch'd just got announced to have an evolution in Sword and Shield, Surfetch, which is a pretty cool model. I'll flash it up on the screen. I do really like its design. It looks pretty dope. However, that is not going to be the focus of today's video. The focus of today's video is actually going to be Farfetch'd itself. As you can see, I have Little Cup pulled up right here with Farfetch'd in it, because technically it is now a pre-evolution and it could technically be in the Little Cup tier. And I wanted to kind of speculate on whether or not it would be good in Little Cup, if it would be too much for Little Cup, or if it would fall somewhere in between being bad and, you know, really too good. So that's kind of what today's discussion is going to be about. If you guys do enjoy, you know, this kind of content and stuff like that, let me know, because I haven't done anything like this before, but I thought it was a pretty cool idea. So yeah, with that being said, let's jump right into it. Starting off with Farfetch'd, we're just going to look at its stats distribution. It has 90 base attack, which is really strong in Little Cup. If you max it out and go adamant, you actually hit 18 attack, which is pretty insane in all honesty. It would tie for the 6th strongest physically offensive mon. It has the same attacks as something like Carvana or Darumaka, and it's actually stronger than Little Cup, like high tier Little Cup mons like Poniard, Ponyta, Mienfu, Drillbur, mons like that. So it hits really hard from the physical side. And Flying Stab is really good in Little Cup. If you haven't played much Little Cup, the normal flying coverage is actually really good here. There's not too many, you know, really good steel types, and if you can support your team to take care of, you know, those like, you know, Sturdy Juice and Rock types and those few steel types that are in the tier, it can be really threatening. Speed-wise is also interesting. If you max out its speed and you go Jolly, it hits 16 speed, which is not super fast, but it's definitely not slow by any means. It speed ties with some pretty, you know, prevalent mons in the tier, such as Volibee. Kabuto is one that kind of comes to mind, because it can, you know, you can potentially win a speed tie with that and knock it out with Leaf Blade or something like that, or you could lose a speed tie and get knocked out by a Rock Slide after some chip. And another big one is its speed ties with Rufflet, and we'll talk more about Rufflet later, but I feel like Farfetch'd and Rufflet are very comparable mons. They're super similar in their stat spread, which is pretty insane actually, being that Rufflet is you know, a small, tiny little bird, and Farfetch'd has been around as a single-stage mon since the first gen. It shows you power creep and all that stuff, but we'll talk about that more so later. However, it having this nice speed tier, you know, this nice little middling speed tier, it is outsped by a lot of big threats in Little Cup, such as Abra outspeeds it, Ghastly, Doduo, which is prevalent because it has the same exact typing, that normal flying, and it also has fighting coverage. So that's something to keep in mind. A mon with the exact same typing, access to a lot of the same utility moves, and, you know, offensive moves and stuff like that, is faster. And it's a little bit not as hard hitting, but it does have access to Swords Dance, just like Farfetch'd, but it also has Jump Kick, which really helps with those rock types and those steel types. So that's another thing to keep in mind. There's a downside to using Farfetch'd opposed to some of the mons are even, you know, introduced already. So there's Doduo. Diglett's also faster than it, obviously. It can't trap it, but it can potentially revenge it with a Rock Slide if it needs to. And then fast electric types. Pretty much all the fast electric types in the tier, or prevalent electrics in general, are going to be able to outspeed Farfetch'd here, such as Elekid. Chinchou actually outspeeds it. Helioptile, which is a little bit less common, as well as Voltorb, which is less common too, but, you know, you see Voltorb sometimes for screen support, and just is a really fast mon. So that's something to keep in mind. The mons that can potentially revenge this thing really easy do outspeed it, so that is something to keep in mind. And then also Mienfu is another mon that outspeeds it by 1. Mienfu hits base 17, hits max speed 17, not base 17. Hits max speed 17, we only hit 16 here. So that's something to keep in mind, because, you know, a reckless high jump kick, or, you know, just a high jump kick after rocks, if he's regenerator set or something like that, is not going to tickle against a Farfetch'd. So it's bulk-wise, it's pretty good. It's not anything insane, but with an Eviolite and a little bit of investment, Eviolite, and with a tiny bit of investment, it can, you know, be potentially pretty bulky, which can be nice for setup sets, nice for like roost sets and things like that, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, other than that, its main draw is going to be its attack. That thing hits a very high amount when it comes to the attack stat. If you max it out, we are going to be hitting 18 attack, which is insane. That hits like an absolute truck. So yeah, that is really cool. When it comes to its abilities, abilities being Defiant is the main one. That's going to be, the big drawing and selling point and stuff like that. If you can catch it on Defog or something like that, get a +2 in its attack. Nothing switching into a +2 Brave Bird really in the tier at all. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if you're like potentially even like a Scarf set or like an Agility set or something like that. This one has a really cool move pool, which we'll get into in a minute. It has Inner Focus, which can be niche in some situations, I guess. That's more so I would feel would be beneficial if you're drafted in like a Little Cup League or something like that. On the ladder, I feel like you 100% want Defiant, but say in a league you're playing against a Meowth, or you're playing against a Pawniard or something, not a Pawniard, a Mienfoo that's, carrying Fake Out or something like that. You could potentially lure it, bait it into faking you out, and then hitting it with a huge Brave Bird or something like that. Kenai, I don't think that'll be used at all. It's pretty much useless. I mean, your accuracy can't be lowered, but I think, Evasion Clause being a thing, and it's not too big of a deal, honestly. It's going to be running Defiant 95% of the time. Maybe 5% Inner Focus if we're lucky. Probably not even 1%. It's going to be running Inner Focus on a ladder unless it's accidentally like a misclick or something like that. But yeah, pretty good abilities. Something I did want to talk about before we get into its move pool is something I kind of touched on a minute ago, was the similarities between Rufflet and Rowlet. Farfetch'd right here. If you look, 83 base attack is pretty comparable to 90. Farfetch'd is a tiny bit stronger, and it has a little bit better in its SPDEF and defense stats. 5 better defense and 12 better SPDEF. They hit the same exact speed tier, obviously. If you go Jolly, you hit 16, but Rufflet has a much higher HP stat, which actually makes a lot of difference in calcs. You can actually take hits a little bit better, despite having Farfetch'd having the better, defense and SPDEF stat. It takes hits a lot better. Like, for example, Rufflet can potentially avoid a KO from a Scarf Reckless High Jump Kick from Mienfoo after rocks. Farfetch'd always dies, even if you're max Impish or something like that. You actually always die to that, even with the Eviolite, opposed to like an Eviolite Rufflet. Another thing that's really similar is their typing. Obviously, normal flying is really a big calling card there. But something that I think Rufflet offers that Farfetch'd doesn't is having that little bit of better bulk and having access to bulk up. Farfetch'd, we'll get into his move pool later more. It's only, boosting setup other than agility is going to be Swords Dance. So you can't pull off, a really bulky Rufflet set a bulky Farfetch'd set off as you can a Rufflet set, because being able to bulk up is obviously great. Different abilities, they both have Keen Eye, but again, don't think that's going to be too big of a deal. But Sheer Force and Hustle, I feel honestly like, while Defiant is a good ability, I feel like Hustle is just ridiculous. It makes this thing insanely strong. It makes it stronger than Farfetch'd, that's for sure. Provided you hit your moves, though, which is obviously, the whole trade-off and point of that. And Sheer Force, if you want to run Sheer Force for, those secondary effect moves and stuff like that on a Life Orb set. But other than that, it gets pretty similar moves. It gets Superpower, which Farfetch'd unfortunately does not get. I think if it got Superpower, it would be much better. We'll talk about it in a second, like I said, but Farfetch'd does struggle breaking steel types. But yeah, I figured that they're pretty comparable, and it kind of shows that Farfetch'd isn't anything insane that would be added to the tier. And there's pros and cons to using Farfetch'd opposed to using Rufflet and things like that. So yeah, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about Farfetch'd move pool. Offensively, it has pretty great coverage. It has access to stuff like Brave Bird. It has access to Knockoff. First Impression, which is pretty niche, but it's pretty fun. I think that's a cool move that it got in 7th gen. I believe Goliath Spot is the only other mon that gets it. It gets access to Leaf Blade, which is really good for those bulky rock types that want to switch into its dual stabs. Being able to hit them with a Leaf Blade and potentially having Stick on there, which is Farfetch'd's signature item. When held by Farfetch'd, it critical hit ratio raised by 2 stages. So I'm pretty sure that makes Leaf Blade always crit, which is pretty cool in all honesty. Especially if you're going up against a boosted mon or something like that, or that kind of thing. It also has access to U-turn for momentum, which is really nice. Quick attack for priority, as well as the First Impression, but quick attack I feel like is the better overall move for this meta, especially on like a Swords Dance set or something like that. Has access to double edge as well for normal stab. Obviously, Return, Frustration, Facade, those normal ones. Has access to Heat Wave if you want to go for like a mixed Farfetch'd to hit those steel types, especially in League. It has a passable stat in 58. Means it can definitely go mixed here. And potentially catch a steel type off guard and do a big chunk to them, especially if they're Fizz Def. Everything's not super bulky in Little Cup, so being a mixed attacker without super huge, special attacking stat isn't too much of a crazy task to really pull off, in all honesty. And then what else does it get offensively? I believe it also gets, what was the other one I had written down? And Poison Jab. Poison Jab is nice to hit fairy super effectively, I suppose. But I feel like that's something more so that maybe you take advantage of in League. But I was looking at some calcs earlier, and like +2 Brave Bird does more than Brave Bird does more to Spritzy than Poison Jab does, just because stab and all that stuff. So it's honestly not too big of a deal. But with that being said, I wanted to come in and kind of speculate on some potential sets that, Farfetch'd could run on the ladder and that kind of thing. The first set I was kind of thinking is just kind of a bulky attacker. Or just, offensive utility. Rocking out with the stick just to potentially get those crits and have that crit Leaf Blade, which is obviously really nice. You can also swap that out for a potential Eviolite or something like that. Even Berry Juice, but I think Eviolite's nicer. And I think Brave Bird Knock Leaf Blade is great coverage. U-turn is good for momentum, but if you want, you can also just go Roost for longevity. I forgot to talk about this thing's, its support move pool. It has a lot of cool options when it comes to that, too. Swords Dance, no bulk up, which is unfortunate. It has Whirlwind for setup as Tailwind, Yawn, and also Wish. I don't think Wish is going to be very useful on Farfetch'd. If you're healing yourself, you're going to use Roost, and I don't think a bulky Wish pressing Farfetch'd is the greatest idea in the world. But yeah, it has access to Roost, so if you want to go Roost 3 attacks with the Eviolite or the stick, either one works, in all honesty. It's kind of dependent on what you feel your team needs, or if you're playing in a league game, your matchup and all that stuff. But I figured that or U-turn is great, because like I said, this thing's going to bulk and bait in a lot of, bulky steals and a lot of bulky, potentially bulky rock types with their sturdies up and stuff like that aren't fearing Leaf Blade. Mostly steals, but if you pair this thing with something like Diglett and you can catch him on a U-turn and then trap him with Dig, that makes this thing a lot more threatening in the end game for sure. So I figured just a standard, 4 attacks offensive utility set would be really good here too. Knocking off items, Brave Birding things, Leaf Blading those rock types and all that stuff. So yeah. Next up, I also thought of potentially a kind of a knockoff Rufflet here. I'm not feeling it as much as, say, like a bulk up Rufflet. I think this is where Rufflet far outclasses Farfetch'd in the bulky setup role. So this one, like I said, it's kind of a knockoff Rufflet, rocking out with Eviolite, Swords Dance, Roost, Brave Bird, and Quick Attack. You can potentially switch out the Quick Attack for like Leaf Blade, for like knockoff. I figure having the priority though for like fast, revenge killers and stuff like that could be really nice if you get +2 with an Adamant Nature. If you're hitting, that super high attack stat right there, that's obviously really, really nice for us. And yeah, this is kind of just, honestly, I'm not feeling this set as much as I am this one right here, which is going to be just a Swords Dance 3 attacks set. Kind of hear my dog chewing on his toy in the background. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's going to be a Swords Dance 3 attack set. You can also swap out either Quick Attack or Leaf Blade for Roost or something like that if you really want the longevity. And you can even go Eviolite on this and just go a faster Eviolite set. Not as much worry about the bulk. Let's change this to Defiant because it's going to annoy me. So I guess you could change it out for Roost on this, or you can go back to Quick Attack and go Roost here. It doesn't really matter. It's preference, like I said. But I figure Leaf Blade plus Quick Attack is also really, really nice, because if you're more offensive Swords Dance set, you're not really worried about longevity. This is going to be your late game win con. You're going to Quick Attack the faster things, and you're going to Brave Bird and Leaf Blade everything slower that can take a hit. So I figure it could be a nice potential late game win con and do really well for your team. And then this last idea is a pretty funky idea, but I figured it'd be cool nonetheless, which would be a Choice Scarf Farfetch'd with Brave Bird, U-turn, Knockoff, and Leaf Blade. Just go max speed, obviously, to speed tie with those base 16s, not seed those base 15s and all that stuff. Throw as much into attack as possible, and then, have a little bit of SPDF as well, which can be really, really clutch, potentially. Access to U-turn makes it a decent Choice Scarf, and like I said, pairing this thing with like a Diglett could be really, really cool, and then having this as a late game win con just to clean up and pick things off with Brave Bird and things like that could obviously be really nice. Another funky idea is like going Final Gambit, which is a pretty cool move that it has access to, and then let's see what its HP maxes out at. It maxes out at... it looks like it's 24, so that's going to do a fair chunk to pretty much everything in the meta, especially anything offensive. You're probably going to knock it out with the max HP Final Gambit Staraptor. That's one of the one I'm thinking of with it, Farfetch'd right here, which is a pretty cool niche option. You could also go, Return or, Double Edge or something like that, just to get dual stabs. I figure having Knockoff, though, to remove items and juices and Eviols and stuff like that could be really clutch. Knockoff is a phenomenal move in Little Cup, obviously. Nothing really wants to take it in the entire tier, regardless of resistances and stuff like that. But yeah, that's going to be Farfetch'd. In my opinion, I really don't think it would be that busted. like I said, there's mons like Doduo or mons like Rufflet that can kind of do things, a few things worse than Farfetch'd, but do a few things better. Like Doduo, I feel like is a better choice, Sword Dance Sweeper. It's a little bit faster, and it hits essentially the same numbers in all honesty. With this, it's just going to not be as bulky and it doesn't have access to roots and stuff, but it also has access to that fighting coverage. Rufflet is a better, bulky setup sweeper. I think Farfetch'd might be a better just overall utility, for attack setter. We don't know, especially being that we don't know a lot of the Gen 8 mons that are going to be coming out in the future here. So I really do think that Farfetch'd could find a place and not be too overwhelming in a little cut meta and stuff like that. And I really hope that we get to test it and try it out because I think that'd be a blast. Using a mon in a tier that it was never ever previously allowed in before, obviously because it wasn't a pre-evo. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you think Farfetch'd would be a little too much, if you disagree with me or anything like that, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments and all that stuff. But yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. Later.